Good afternoon, and welcome to our end of summer, beginning of fall podcast. We took a little hiatus due to the busy summer hours. Joining me today is our Community Relations Officer and Public Information Officer, Nick Soley, who's been a frequent guest and a past guest, but taking over as our Community Relations Officer and learning the PIO portion of it is Officer Heather. And she's been on in the past as well when we talked, I believe, about DRE type things and traffic-related matters. So welcome. They're both on today as we are transitioning Nick back to the road for his future career goals, and Heather has taken over. So welcome.
Thank you.
So Heather, we're going to start with you a little bit. Let's talk about some of the things you want to do in this role and why you put in for the community relations position.
We'll start with why I put in for it. My whole career, I've really enjoyed being with people out in the community, and having a department that has a specific role for it was an awesome opportunity. Even when I applied here almost 3 years ago, I knew that that was my goal of what I wanted to do once I got my feet wet in the department and kind of learned how the department worked. And I learned about community members and the businesses and all of the different HOAs and all the different subdivisions and all the kids and everything like that. So I'm excited to learn about what you do, and as you teach me how to do the job and continue with the great job that you did. Some things that I might want to do in the future, maybe some gun safety for whole families, not just CPL classes. So little kids, if you guys have guns in your home, they might be comfortable making sure they're locked up and all that type of stuff. Maybe some fitness type stuff to get the community members going, women's only things, and definitely the defensive tactics for women's. I want to ramp that back up again.
Yeah, and you are one of our defensive tactics instructors.
Yep, and I just went through lockup training, so I'm all good to go with that. Came back with a bunch of nice bruises, but super refreshed.
But it's an intense training and so important, especially in a community such as ours, where we do have, a lot of our residents are going to college. You talked about the female aspect, but how important that is.
Absolutely.
For us to be able to support that, to provide defensive tactic training, and just really social awareness. There was, at a couple college campuses this week, and there was tragedy striking where students were shot at parties. And sometimes we forget about our situational awareness and what we're doing. We can be at anywhere and something could happen, as we've seen tragically this weekend. Nick, obviously been in this role now how many years?
4
years.
4 years.
Transitioning back to the road. And don't worry, we're getting a car made up for Maggie too. So Maggie, and I know people care about Nick, but Maggie's there. Actually will be a benefit more to the community a little bit with Nick being back on the road. With Maggie deployable to the road, as she is now, but she'll be out there, and if somebody's on a car accident and you're there, she can be there to comfort.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that a few times, and that was happen chance or good luck that I was in the area and kids involved in a car accident in the back seat. We'll be out there a little bit more with her, so that'll be good. That'll be exciting, and it's nice to still have her out in the community, and we can lend her over to Heather for events and things like that. But I think we're very fortunate to have her, and she's become pretty well known here and throughout some other departments, and she's helped me, I think, gain some traction on that aspect and get some other departments on board to where we're getting a more widespread, which has been really, really fun to work with.
Yeah, and again, we've talked in the past about the deployment of her even at Michigan State and other events that truly matter, and it really makes a difference. Let's talk a little bit about your transition back to the road and what Heather can kind of expect as a community relations and some of the things that you did in your time there.
Yeah, so I always have talking points, right? One of the talking points I've used on this show before is when I came into this role 4 years ago, you kind of sit and ponder, what is it that I do as community relations officer? What does that mean? So I developed a definition of my own for it. And my definition for that was I'm going to deliver the chief's message and the department's message out to the community in any way I can that can show our mission and our value of this police department and get some knowledge out there. And then we dove a little bit deeper than that, and it was, well, what is our community and defining our community? So I broke it down that if you live, if you work, if you go to school, or if you travel through our community, really at some point in your day, you're a part of our community and you're a community member, and we're going to treat you no different than we treat our residents. So really hammering down on that. And we take that message out from the department or the chief and say, listen, this is what our department's about. This is what we're doing right now. These are the things our officers are out there doing. These are the crime trends, and we deliver that message any way possible. Sometimes it's on the news, Fox 2, WDIV, Channel 7, our locals. Sometimes it's in person at a community meeting. We go out to our HOAs, our subdivision, and sometimes it's just really fun community events like the open house or picnics, things like that, where we get out there, and it's a lot less formal. But people are more apt to come up to you and ask you questions like, hey, what really is going on in Bloomfield Township? And spreading all of the tools and the resources we have that really cover the transparency of our department out there. Not a lot of people know that you can go to our website and track every crime that occurs in the township, right? There's a whole crime mapping system that's free to the public, and there's a link right on our website. Not many people know you can read all of our annual reports for the last 15 years on our website and see how crime trends have changed, how the department's changed, but our mission and values have really stayed the same.
Yeah, and behind the scenes of any police department are you guys, right? And when I say that is so much of the message I do have to deliver. There's only one of me, and our administrative staff has to run a police department as well. And so we try to get out and be transparent as possible. We want to be the face of the community. And I think your transition, I think it's going to be a great transition as you are that friendly, officer friendly when people come up. And it'll be a great transition for you as well. As far as the public information officer aspect of it,
That's going to be new.
you'll also see Heather on the news more frequently when things do happen. But Nick has created that relationship with all of our news agencies, our local media, not only our own in-house cable, which we're very fortunate to have. I mean, Heather's outside today shooting a.
Michigan legal bicycles, the 3-foot passing rule or law actually for the bicyclist.
Yeah, so we try to be that agency that's out branding who we are. That's one thing that you'll be learning here in the near future is, how important that relationship is with all of our local media, whether it's print media from our hometown papers to maybe the high schools, journalism classes to our actual news media.
Well, and it's twofold, right? It's building those relationships, understanding they have a job to do, and working with them to get their job done, but also spreading our message out there where it's not just bad stuff, right? We have a great police department, and I'm proud to work here, but we have to showcase that. It is important for our residents to see what we're doing out there. If you're an average resident who lives a peaceful, quiet, life at home, you might not realize what your police are doing good, whether it's community service or whether it's catching criminals. And I think it's important not just for the transparency aspect of that, but to really showcase the men and women that our department have hired on their training, their expertise, the way they talk to people. And we can do that by sharing some real life, stories on what we're doing out there. So it is very much twofold, and it's an important part to the job. And I've had a blast doing it. You build some awesome relationships and meet some really great people. And it's opened my eyes, right? We always talk about humanizing police officers and how we're people and we just have a job to do, but at the end of the day, we go home. I think, Chief, you've seen that. We've seen that in our relationships with some of these local, news personalities on. We never really thought about how it affects them when they have to deliver the news or, how they're impacted by the same crimes that their viewers are impacted by. So it's been very awesome and very eye-opening, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when you took over the role, we talked about how do we become that agency, because I do feel like for a long, and it wasn't purpose, it wasn't on purpose, it just wasn't a priority. There was other priorities at the time, but with the way the image of law enforcement it is, we are human. Things do affect us the same way they affect our victims. Not only that, we have to we interview our victims, we spend time with our victims, and we want them to know we care. And I think that's one of the things I think our community is going to get with you is that in this transition, kind of being really natural, is with Heather. you do have that compassionate side in more ways, and even with animals, right? We like to tease Heather because she's always caring for all of our animals when the animal welfare is not here. But that shows the human side of you, and the care and compassion. If you're going to an animal, you're definitely going to give it to a person. So let's talk a little bit about your experience and the things you did. I mean, you're obviously a DRE, drug recognition expert, which we've talked about in the past. But let's tell them who Heather is.
I guess all my certifications. I've been a police officer for over 11 years. I've worked for 4 different departments, suburban, down in Detroit. I worked at Wayne State University. I worked for the Metro Parks, and then I also worked at Warren. So I had a wide variety of experiences as a police officer. Most of my time was spent down at Wayne State. I was a bike patrol officer down there, and it was an important part to get into the community down there. That's kind of how I started, I guess, my love for being out in the community, not just, enforcing laws and being there for people's worst days, but it was nice being there for people's greatest days or when they're having fun, and just showing them that we are people and, we have to go home to our families also and all of that. But my certifications, I've been a field training officer for 6 or 7 years, a drug recognition expert. I'm SFST instructor. I teach at Oakland Police Academy, not the County Police Academy. And what else do I have? I'm an evidence tech. I'm a defensive tactics instructor. I have all the RAD certifications, so rape, aggression, defense. That's for women. We also teach men's classes. That's generally taught by a man, though. So we try to keep it gender specific for that specific programming. That's what's required.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those certifications will transition straight over into the community relations area, right? And we talk about how much, Nick, you can talk to about how much of your job is truly education with our community.
Yeah, with our community and, the messaging we put out there, it is education. Heather's going to accompany me this evening. We're going to go do a women's club, and that's what they wanted tonight was a situational awareness class. They see the things that are going on and they want to know what can we offer. But if we can educate our community, they understand the why better, right? And that's the big picture is teaching people the why we do what we do, why we're stopping vehicles, why we have extra patrol here, why we have radar trailers out, why it takes us so long to get to a noise complaint, right? It's all education. And the community, we have a very smart community. There's no doubt about that. And when they can understand the why, or they can understand, the mechanics behind what we do, they appreciate it more. And a lot of their questions are answered just based off the education of what we do and why we're doing it. So that's a huge part of it. And we do bring, and I know Heather's going to bring it just like I brought it, just like Officer Marthin brought it, just like Pete Matejchak brought it, that experience from being a police officer and all those certifications, whether it's a range officer or FTO. Heather and I are both DREs, so we understand the importance of impaired driving and drugs and alcohol and getting behind the wheel of a vehicle. All of that, crime prevention, and it's a lot, but we're able to turn that and teach our community kind of the psychological parts of it and the why a part of it, and it helps us do our job and it helps them understand what we're doing. And
I think that's one of the things that has changed over time. Since I became a police officer, in 2000, we always used the role of the catchphrase of community policing. Well, we are community police officers, and I think that's kind of the tradition I grew up under, even under myself. But as these departments over the last 5-10 years have progressed, we realize that we need people dedicated to the education of our community, to be the face of our communities, when always the chief or the captains cannot be. But they know you as Officer Heather, right? It's just not that officer that's on the side of the road writing a ticket every time and enforcing laws.
And that was one of the big things that I pushed in this role, and I know Heather's going to do the same thing, is it's just because I'm the community relations officer doesn't mean we're a community-oriented police department. We're a community-oriented police department because of what every one of our officers on the road does. Sometimes our title gets mixed up and they'll call us the community liaison officer, which is the same thing, but it actually makes a little more sense. We're that officer that the community calls when they have a problem that's not quite criminal, it's not quite let's call 911 or the police and have them come out here, but it's an ongoing issue and it's problem solving. And if we can get to the root cause of some of these bigger problems, it stops our patrol officers from going out and dealing with the same complaint over and over and over. And we go out and try and handle them at the root cause. And we're that face. Heather is going to be that person for Mrs. Smith to say, you know what? I don't need to call the police department, but I know Officer Heather, and I can call Officer Heather, and she can give me some pretty sound advice on maybe how I can keep my car from getting broken into. And that's important. But you're going to see community-oriented policing from top to bottom, from you, chief, all the way down to the guy we hired who's riding out there with an FTO today.
Yeah. And you guys hear me say it, and I've already said it on the, we recognize that every single person we come into contact has a story, as well as the officer that's making a traffic stop or interacting with somebody that day, all the way down to, to the person that we stop. We don't know what kind of day they had prior to. And so treating people the way with dignity and respect at all levels is truly important. Nick, let's talk about, let's talk about some of the services, and maybe Nick's probably going to answer this a little more, that'll be transitioned into Heather, just to remind our residents about home surveys, vacation home watches, the things that we take for granted kind of internally in the agency because we just do it, but it's so important to our residents.
It is, and there's a lot of services I think our police officers, when they go home to other communities, wish their police departments had, and several of them have created, but we do a very good job, whether it's our vacation house watches or our house checks. You go out of town, even for a weekend, submit a form online, comes right to your community relations officer. We get it scheduled in. Officers come out, they check on the house, they get out of the patrol car, they walk around your house, they check the doors, they make sure nothing's changed. Several times when I was on patrol, I found main breaks in the houses, you hear water running. It's not always just criminal, right? And that's twofold as well. I tell people don't hesitate to do that because your neighbors love it as well, because it puts another patrol car in their neighborhood regularly, which is a deterrent for crime. We offer our CPL classes. We continue to do that. We do home security surveys, residential security surveys, pretty much any kind of class you can think of. If we don't have it, I know I've made an effort, Kelly made an effort, Pete made an effort, Heather will make an effort to go out there and learn it so they can put on some sort of presentation for you. And if they can't, the connections that we have, finding someone who is qualified to do that and bringing them in, all at no cost to our community. Again, whether you're a business owner or a resident, we're happy to do that.
Prescription drop-offs.
Drop-offs. I mean, there's so many. Vehicle lockouts. I don't know how many people don't know.
Right now, you're trained in the home security survey. So if somebody, called and said, "Hey, I want you to walk around my house and give me some advice on the exterior," we can't obviously recommend vendors or that, but if the bushes are too high near the front door, or there's,
we come in and do a full 360 assessment, and those are classes that Heather's going to go to, and it's all crime prevention through environmental design. So it's relatively cheap and easy fixes you can do to your residence or your business to deter crime, really, without going out and buying a $6,000 security system or replacing every door. So we'll work with you doing that, and it's all very valuable.
And one of the things that I know that Heather, you'll probably pick up on too, is that if our residents have ideas for a type of community engagement where we think we can get a large, I know Nick created with our partner agencies, our youth academy, which has been a huge success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even our citizen police academy for anybody in the township who wanted to come through. Those partnerships with our school district and you working closely with our school resource officers to create programs or to develop programs. We do, it seems every year somewhere locally, and it's sad, but you'll hear about a drag racing car accident where, young teens, young drivers are tragically killed, or drunk driving, and we don't recognize that. And to be able to get into the schools on a more intimate level in a health class, let's say, and give a presentation on the drug recognition experts and what are the things you need to be concerned about, are invaluable to our community. While it may seem like a lecture to some, it's reinforcing probably what our parents in our community are already telling their kids, please don't do it. But now they're hearing from real life people who've had to make those hard knocks on doors at night to deliver some bad news so your experience there, I think, will be, again, you'll be invaluable. And from an agency perspective, we're going to support, any
Definitely.
idea that comes up. So wanted to get in and introduce you guys. In a moment here, we'll talk a little bit about some summer activities we had. I know Heather's been on before again, but to be able to make this transition, it'll take place at the end of October. But in the meantime, there's going to be some training going on in there, and then you'll see Officer Nick's face back on the road. And I'm sure a lot of the people you've dealt with a lot will be still reaching out. But we're excited for the transition, both for Nick and his future within the agency, and for Heather, for you moving forward in this role. I know I can tell you this, I'm going to have a lot of demands and a lot of things. Real quick, we'll transition over to just talk a little bit about our summer activities. I know we had, like I said at the beginning, that we have had a little bit of a delay in doing some of the podcasts. But Nick, we'll start. We've had a busy summer. Mid-July, end of July, we had the USGA, the Junior Amateur at Oakland Hills. A week later, we had the Maccabi Games. 2 weeks later, we had the Dream Cruise. Events that brought just wonderful people to the township, but kept us really, really busy for that from mid-July to end of August. We've been nonstop.
Quite busy.
Yeah. Great experience down. I don't know, Heather, did you work any of the USGA tournament at all?
I tried to,
Yeah.
but then somebody didn't make it far enough, so I got next.
Yeah. But we ended up having a lot of people down there. Obviously, we had some with Charlie Woods qualified, and Tiger was in town, so that created some challenges for us, just fan-wise. It brought in more fans to Oakland Hills. And for me, that was kind of the comeback story of Oakland Hills after the tragic fire a couple of years ago. The clubhouse is being rebuilt. The tournament started, and it kind of starts a long tradition of tournaments, really for the next 20-something years down there. We had the Maccabi Games, which are the Jewish Olympics for
several locations throughout the township.
Yep.
So.
And then the Dream Cruise brought in. We had great weather for the majority of it. I think it seemed like the rain stayed everywhere but in Bloomfield. We didn't have much rain at all in Bloomfield Township. No. But all those events were successful. We had, as far as I know, we had no issues at all. A lot of that goes to the planning, and like Nick, you said, and Heather, that it's to the dedication our officers put into making sure people are having a good time, responsibly, and getting out. And I know I drove through several parking lots during the Dream Cruise, and our officers' cars were parked on the side of the road or on the side of the parking lots, and you couldn't never know what to be found out mingling with the crowds. So,
and that's an important part. I think something that the general public sometimes loses sight of is how fun these events are for us. Right? You look at the USGA. This brought in so many young amateur golfers from not only all over the country, but all over the world, right? We got to interact with these parents and the fans and the people that were there, and really, we took it as an opportunity, I know, at least from what I saw, to showcase our department. I don't know how many guys I saw out there and gals giving dinner recommendations to out-of-towners on where they could go, and then seeing them the next day like, hey, how was your, whatever I sent you to eat, and we had a lot of fun with that. And it's the same when you get into Dream Cruise and the Maccabi Games. Again, Maccabi Games all over the country, international, and talking to these people that are guests of the township, and we're the first face they see, and they recognize it pretty simple off of the patch on our arms that we are Bloomfield Township. It's a tremendous amount of fun for us to interact with these people.
Yeah,
I think they think
and everything.
I think sometimes they think we're just out there working and doing our job, which we are, but we have a blast doing it. Those are some of the most fun times of our careers.
Yeah, and as far as I wish we had some wood to knock on. I get quite a few questions about the South American theft groups that were targeting home invasions, and knock on, again, we don't have wood in here to knock on, but it's been relatively quiet on that front. We know Troy Police Department made a phenomenal arrest over the summer, which helped with some of it. We had our rash of car thefts and unlocked vehicle larceny from autos again throughout the summer. And those are just reminders, again, for all of us to lock our cars, to do that 9 o'clock check.
Yep, that 9 p.m., lock your cars, make sure your valuables are outside. But again, it's seasonal and cyclical, and that's one of the things Heather and I are going to start talking about as well, is crime trends. And as we move into, let's say, election season, we might see a little more mail fraud. Tax season, you see more mail fraud. So it really never ends. It just kind of cycles from one crime to the next, and how can we prepare our community for them? Scams are still up like never before. We just if you don't follow us on social media, Heather's going to start taking over our social media. Twitter, Facebook, we get a majority of our stories out that way. We just put out a new scam, so look at that. I think we've had in the last 3 days 12 different people come in that didn't necessarily fall victim, but were kind of baited into this scam. So
Yeah, that's still our number one problem. And then we'll close just with, we understand in our community, this summer, we had a ton of construction. The frustration goes every level, especially from a first responder perspective, and I'll speak on behalf of our fire department and probably our DPW as well, is that we had just as much trouble getting around the township due to the various road projects that extended into other communities as well. Hopefully by the end of October, early November, the Square Lake project will be done. That poses us, I don't want to discredit or lessen the impact it has on our community and the residents that live in there. But we understand, and we did our best to try to get officers into those areas while still focusing on the crimes. And we want to get the message out to our community to have those conversations when we talk about the teen drivers. We did see a lot of careless driving over the summer on Woodward and these high powerful vehicles that these newer drivers are driving. We had some videos sent to us this weekend on some tragedies that occurred in other jurisdictions where these kids they're filming their speedometers at 105 to 112 miles per hour on residential roads and on freeways and roads similar to Woodward. So please have a conversation with our kids. I know Heather will be making this a point, as Nick did, and as our traffic team comes back hopefully soon, to make this a point of conversation, because if we're enforcing, that means we haven't gotten that out early enough. So it's kind of a summer recap. Luckily, we had I want to say major things over the summer, but it kept us busy. Weather was great, and again, congratulations, Heather, on this new position. I'm excited for you. You already know I'll keep you busy, and Nick will tell you that. And Nick, good luck going back onto the road in October, and exciting things for all your futures. So. Thanks for attending today or watching our podcast, and we'll be back in a couple weeks filming another one.